Today we're going to be covering 3 simple hip strengthening exercises that you can do to build strength into the deep rotators of your hip musculature, but also help deal with pain if you are currently experiencing that, or potentially avoid pain in the future if you're just trying to keep your hips healthy and happy. These 3 exercises require very minimal equipment. The equipment that you do need are very cheap and easily found on Amazon. All that it is bands or ankle weights. And for each of these versions, we're also going to show you a bonus exercises that ups the ante and challenges you just a little bit more as well. So be sure to stay tuned, watch through all the videos, drop a comment down below if you like this video, and comment below also anything you'd like to see in the future addressed on this channel. Now the first exercise you see here is a very simple, standard clamshell exercise. Now, I don't want you to discount the benefit of this activity because it is so commonly found. What I want you to understand is the nuance behind this exercise and why it's super important to develop control and stability within the hip. Stability is the control in the presence of change, so we're trying to control the pelvis and the femur as we change the environment or change the amount of resistance as you go through this range of motion. Be slow, don't be quick. See too many people just pulse up and down and roll their hips back and forth. You want to keep the hips level, facing the wall that is straight in front of you. When you do this correctly, maintaining the right pelvis position, and go slowly to encourage time under tension, and this simple little exercise can yield a significant amount of benefits for your overall health, especially if you're dealing with pain currently. Now the way to up the ante is you do the same exact exercise, but you do it in a side plank position. Now you're training the glutes with the abs, hitting multiple areas at once, as well as challenging yourself physically to make this a little bit less tedious or boring of an exercise. Same keys apply. Do not go quickly through this exercise. Keep the hips facing straight ahead. Don't arch your back. Now the second exercise is very similar. This is a reverse clamshell. So now we're going to keep the knees together and lift the feet apart from one another. So this is going to work the opposite musculature of what we just did, which is external rotation with the normal clamshell. Now keys to performing this exercise correctly and not cramping up in the front hip pocket or that TFL area. The TFL is a hip internal rotator, so you will feel some tension in the front of the hip. It shouldn't just be the primary sensation that you feel. You want to feel this into the deep outside aspect of your hip on the back side of the seam. It should feel very deep because we're working the deep rotators of the hip. Common mistake that I'll see with this is people not putting a block between the knees. A block between the knees is super helpful because it spaces the knees apart, keeps a normal amount of adduction as opposed to if you overly adduct or a deduct cross midline, that's going to have a higher tendency to kick on the front hip pocket or your TFL musculature. So making sure you're spaced hip width apart, this is very important for the setup and to get the exercise right so that you feel it in the correct area. Again, move slow with this. You want to think about leading with your heel, not your toe. This again will help you feel it in the correct area. And then finally, this is an exercise that I prefer be done with an ankle weight because it provides consistent resistance through the entire range of motion. And these are some smaller muscles that you will be working here, as opposed to a band which provides peak resistance at the top and next to no resistance at the bottom. The other added benefit of having that block between the knee is it allows for the ankle to go through a larger range of motion. So now you're training the muscle through a little bit larger range of motion as opposed to if you did not have the block there. Don't expect yourself to be quite as strong with hip internal rotation as you are external rotation, simply because we don't have the big glute max muscle working for us anymore. This hip internal rotation is going to be a little bit deeper as far as the sensation that you feel with it. Don't push yourself through pain, pinching, sharpness, or an ache or toothache feeling in the front of your hip. And again, it's why we use a weight or an ankle weight instead of a resistance band, because all the resistance being at the top, a lot of times there is weakness in that shortened position, and if that's where the highest amount of resistance is applied, that can be a reason why you start feeling this crampy sensation in the front of the hip joint. You can use a band, just make sure you're feeling it in the correct areas. Personally, again, I prefer the ankle weight. Finally, the third exercise that we're covering is hip abduction, down and side lying. This is another one that I prefer the ankle weight over top of the band, but the band can also be utilized for this exercise as well. Now, the longer lever arm you create, meaning you place the band at the ankle, it's going to be a lot more challenging than if you place the band around the knee. So again, perform this at the level that you are comfortable doing, where you feel it in the correct area, which is the lateral aspect of the hip. You should not feel this at your joint. You should feel this in the musculature. And again, it should not leave a lingering toothache feeling in the musculature either. If it is, you're using too heavy of a weight or too much resistance at this current moment in time. So shorten the lever arm by bringing the band above the knee, or use an ankle weight either placed around the ankle, which gives more consistent range of motion through that long lever arm, or you place the ankle weight around the knee, which shortens the lever arm and makes the exercise easier. Keys to this exercise is very similar to the very first exercise that we did. You want to make sure your hips are rolled forward, facing straight towards the wall in front of you. And as you lift that leg up, don't let your pelvis rock or roll around. The other mistake that you'll see is a lot of people will let their leg drift forward out in front of their hip. You need to make sure that hip stays straight in line with your shoulder joint, if not slightly behind. And then finally, people think the goal of this is to lift the leg up as high as you possibly can. We don't want that. If you notice the hip or the pelvis start to shrug up on you, you're going too high with this movement, and you're using your back to start lifting the leg higher. Again, we want stability at the hip, which is control in the presence of change, meaning you should be able to maintain a level pelvis as you raise your femur through a full range of motion. Usually people will get only to about 45 degrees. If you can't get there, generally it's a strength issue, but again, don't force yourself through anything you're not currently capable of. And lastly, if we're trying to spice this exercise up another notch, we're going to do this also in a side plank position. We call these star side planks, where you're on the knee, top leg is straight, and you're lifting straight up towards the ceiling. Now we're including both abs and hip abduction musculature. So these three exercises are great to build strength, help to avoid pain in the first place, but if you're dealing with pain, these are great exercises to help get you out of hip pain. These are useful for various different diagnoses, such as hip osteoarthritis, such as hip bursitis, such as hip tendinopathy, such as hip impingement. I commonly use all three of these exercises for those patients time and time again. IT band pain is another one. So give these exercises a shot. Drop it down in the comment section below how they go for you. If you're looking for a specific workout plan or a rehab plan, then you can email me, greg@sportsrehabexpert.com, and we discuss what that looks like and what that entails.